Hi friends, I just wanted to make a quick intro before I start the actual video. I'm making this after I recorded everything, but I just wanted to make a discernment that I later kind of looked up just to check, and it turns out that spiritual warfare, I think, is used more so to reference what happens externally, like from the outside, whether it's you're being attacked or you're being isolated or you're being accused or things like this, whereas ego warfare or setbacks are kind of what flare up on the inside. But the common thread between both of them is that I think they point to a sort of kink in the hose of your energy, psyche, whatever. I think if you're an enlightened person who has completely mastered your own mind, I don't know, this is just my speculation, that demons and darkness and lies and, you know, things that come and try to attack you from the outside, they kind of just dissolve. They dissolve and they don't stick to you. They don't affect you. I don't know, that's just what I have seen outside in the context of what people have said about enlightened masters, and what I've learned, for example, in Veda Vedanta traditions or Tibetan Buddhism, just learning about the way that the mind and the ego work from those perspectives. So yeah, just wanted to make that distinction. Ego setbacks and spiritual warfare are not exactly the same thing. Ego points to more in internal, spiritual warfare points to external, but they are very, very connected and they certainly overlap. Also from a depth psychology perspective, you know, Jung says until you make your unconscious conscious, it will rule your life and you will call it fate. That speaks to how also in, you know, neo-spiritual communities, people talk about how, you know, we attract certain situations that reflect the deeper parts of our psyche. And I don't know if I agree completely with the wording of that, and I am not a huge fan of neo-spirituality in general, so I want to be just, you know, take this all with some salt. But yeah, I think that, like, there is a distinction to be said about the state of the ego and how clear the psyche is, and how able a person is to process perceptions without them getting kind of stuck in the emotions. Because like I said, from the perspective of certain, you know, Eastern religions, there's a teachings that I've heard about how, you know, the enlightened mind does not, it, like, darkness can't touch it, you know what I mean? So anyway, there's a lot more caveats there, and I am sure I opened up a Pandora's box just a little bit with some of the things that I added on, but just want to make this distinction. It is, you know, ego setbacks and spiritual warfare are different in the sense that one comes from inside, one comes from outside, but they both reflect one another almost exactly at some points. So just wanted to add that. Hello, hello, hello. How are you doing? Welcome to this video. I have some thoughts, so I'm gonna talk. I apologize if I appear lackadaisical or fatigued. I kind of am today. I feel a little heavy, well, right now. But I wanted to talk about the concepts of spiritual warfare and ego defense mechanisms and growth and change. And I'm going to make some parallels between certain ideas that I've heard in the spiritual community, in different spiritual communities, regarding just growth and change and evolution in general. One is is from a more psychological lens, and the other one is from a more, I don't know, pseudo-religious, spiritual lens. So, you know, if you're into the kinds of things that I post, you probably aren't a stranger to the idea or the experience that when you are growing up in your life and you set foot into new territory, or you're about to go towards something new, whether it's moving or a new relationship or letting go of relationships or moving to a new city or leaving an old city or doing a new activity that's like challenging or maybe scary to some degree, like ice climbing or cross-country horseback riding or whatever it is. I've never gone ice climbing, but I am a horse gal, so those things popped up into my mind as semi-extreme sports with kind of intimidating conditions that can be scary to learn, or like rock climbing even, you know, especially climbing outside versus climbing in a gym is so different. I've only climbed outside once, but the rope had so much give that if I were to take a fall, I would fall probably like 10 feet. You know, when I'm on like 100-foot tall cliffside overlooking a whole entire valley, you know, that's intimidating, it's scary. And my body certainly makes it known that it is scared in such circumstances. So that's what our ego, what our body is designed to do. My understanding of the ego is that it is not bad. It is just the vehicle or the link between the spirit and the flesh. The ego is the thing that creates a map of relativity so that we can navigate the world and make sense of things. The ego is kind of where our personality comes from. It's where likes and dislikes come from. It's what allows us to participate and experience fulfillment from like cultural activities such as eating certain food or doing certain dances. You know, I don't know, there's a lot of nuance and overlap in, I think, like the definition of ego and fulfillment and, you know, things like this. But just generically, the ego is a link between the spirit and the flesh. The ego's purpose is to protect the flesh. So at times when the spirit wants to expand, it will create magnetic poles or give you dreams or give you the thought or give you the motion of longing that says, I really want to go to this landscape. I don't know why, but every year it just gets stronger and stronger, my longing for a relationship. Or I can't put my finger on it, but I just feel like I need to talk to this person, this strange person that I don't know. And I'm nervous. And what if I don't have enough money? And what if blah, blah, blah? That's the ego. And that's it doing its job to protect your flesh from dying, essentially. That's its role. And it creates all these different kinds of thoughts. First it creates these physical sensations that then translate sometimes instantly or imperceptibly into thoughts. The thoughts are the things that come after the primordial feelings, if you know what I'm saying. For example, what was he? Tom Cruise? Whoever did that stunt recently on the airplane wing, even just looking at that, the image of a man hanging off the side of a freaking airplane wing makes my body feel tense. It makes my heart beat a little faster. When I perceive danger somatically, my body is the very, very first thing to respond, to inform myself of a potential threat. So apply that to the case of the spirit wanting to expand. For example, talking to the stranger because you feel drawn to them for a reason you don't understand. cross-country road trip, even though you have no plans, no idea where you're going, you're nervous, you don't know how it's going to go, but you feel called and you can't deny the truth. You can't deny the voice that you feel inside, or feeling called to pursue a relationship because it's aligned and you know, it does something to you. So those feelings, they come in the body as excitement, and like you can take fuller breaths. Sometimes it feels like warmth or like a pleasant buzzing or vibration, and the face, the muscles around the face become lighter. And after the physical sensations, you know, same as like watching Tom Cruise hanging off an airplane wing, after the physical sensations of whatever you're responding to, whatever you're perceiving, that reaction, the thoughts follow. So the thoughts that would follow after perceiving Tom Cruise hanging off a, you know, perceiving any kind of danger, I would think, oh, I need to avoid this. That's a thought. I would never do this. That's a thought. That person's crazy. That's a thought. That's not a feeling. Those are thoughts that arise from the feelings. Do you understand what I'm saying? I made a video on this recently about how concepts arise out of experience, and if you have a thought or a hardwired belief, like, pay attention to the somatic experience that gave life to it. Sometimes it can be very tricky to decipher and discern a thought from an experience or a thought from a feeling, but it's so empowering to learn how to do that, because you can have a lot more control of your narrative, and actually I think remain a lot more grounded when it comes to making that feel threatening. Sorry about that, I just had an alarm go off and it cut me off. So yeah, God, I hate when this happens. So yeah, the experience comes before the thoughts. The thoughts are just the ego's way of responding to, you know, reality, and the thoughts are the messages that are, it's almost like thoughts are like our ego's best attempt at translating the language of the body to the language of the mind and the intellectual understanding. It's not like we're, you know, animals that don't really have the same language processing systems as humans, and we're more impulsive and instinctively active. You know, humans don't move like other animals do. Humans think a lot more and sit still for longer, at least nowadays. And at least, you know, with all these words and these opportunities to think and sit in our minds as we have today. So yeah, so that's kind of my understanding of how the ego tries to protect us when we're moving into, you know, new territory. So it's just a neutral observation. And so that's kind of like the psychological, psychosomatic perspective of things. And then there's the spiritual, pseudo-religious, side of things. And like the term that has been coined for this phenomena, whatever, would be spiritual warfare. So let me get kind of metaphysical and explain what I think spiritual warfare means on an energetic, metaphysical, spiritual level. We understand that everything is energy, right? So what is spirit? I forget the language, but I think commonly spirit translates essentially to wind or breath or air. Spirit is, what is spirit? It's invisible. You can't necessarily see it with the naked eye. The spirit translates as a feeling. The spirit holds invisible impulses, that it's like the breath of life. Spirit is the breath of life. Without spirit, the world is inanimate. Take a look at animism, animistic cultures and traditions. They understand that within all things, living or non-living, there's a spirit. And that animates that object that would otherwise be lifeless, so to speak, with divine qualities, like a rock. The rock imbibes the qualities of... What the hell are you fucking doing, dude? I'm so sorry. I'm like trying to move out of the way of this motorcyclist, and it's like, you know when people like try to cut you off from behind and it's like, what are you actually doing? Yeah, I was like signaling and getting over, and then you just zipped, like, and he was like riding my butt. That is not fun. It's like, Jesus Christ. Every time I'm on the roads out here, stupid traffic BS happens, and it just riles me up. So, oh my gosh. I think something similar happened in one of the last videos I posted as well. It's just the nature of driving this place, which I'm leaving like tomorrow or the next day. I'm gone. I'm out of here for good. And I cannot wait. You know, which is kind of why I'm making this video, because I'm thinking a lot about leaps of faith and growth, and I'm experiencing my own version of like spiritual warfare. So anyway, a rock. What does a rock imbibe? A rock imbibes the qualities of stillness and a long, drawn-out perception of time, or a sense of timelessness, a sense of steadiness, stability, structure, weight, grounding. Those are energetic, non-physical qualities. You can't touch the feeling of groundedness directly, but the spirit of groundedness exists in a rock, or in the number 4, or on the surface of a table, or in the legs of a chair, or in the seat that you sit on. Grounding. It's a spirit. Okay? So, spiritual warfare. I kind of lost my train of thought here. So basically, I'm going to do my best to explain this. When the ego flares up and does all the stuff that it does to help us survive, you know, it's operating the way that it was divinely designed to do. And in the unseen world, in the unseen realms, the fabric of reality that holds everything together, that says the ego does this, mind does this, body does this, rock does this, you know, there's a blueprint for creation somewhere. And I don't mean that literally. I just mean that there are patterns of energetics that exist in certain combinations, in certain wavelengths, in certain frequencies, and it's like that creates the chorus of reality, the song of life. So that's pretty spiritual. So what happens when the nature of reality begins to feel discordant? What happens when you are trying to grow towards new horizons in your life, trying to grow and do new things, make big decisions, and then you feel almost like your ego is holding you back, or your own flesh is creating discomfort, feels a little discordant. And what else is discordant? What else is disorienting? What else is painful? War. Spiritual warfare. I think spiritual warfare is just another term to describe what happens in the mind, body, ego, flesh when us humans are faced with massive decisions and big turning points, or right before we're about to step into the next big role in our lives. It's almost like a test. It's like, how grounded in faith and in the truth of what you know in your heart and soul that you're called towards, that you're moving towards, can you remain in the midst of this ego flare-up / spiritual warfare? Yeah, so that's really all I wanted to say. I hear all this terminology talked about everywhere. I am a very spiritual person, but I'm also obsessed with patterns. And I see a lot of crossover in many different circles, whether you're into psychology or religion or spirituality, and I appreciate both. And I love mysticism for this exact reason. Mysticism pays attention to patterns that shape other patterns and phenomenon in the world. Mysticism is kind of like the metaphysical understanding of kind of reality. It's the mystical core. It's like the unanswered questions, the place of observing the patterns that we can observe and trying to piece them together and match them on top of other patterns to answer deeper questions about reality that are commonly unanswered. And sometimes the only way to really do that is through experiencing. Mysteries have to be experienced, you know? It's like science. You know, you can make a hypothesis and then you need to test it. The test is the experience. Science and spirituality, they're parallel. They're just different frameworks, different structures. They're genuinely kind of the same. They have similar currents. They're not the same thing, but they function similarly. I really don't think they're separate at all, honestly. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed these thoughts. Leave a comment, let me know what you think. And as always, if you're interested in working with me personally, I have some offerings in the description below. And I also, I'm open to mentoring or guiding or sharing or speaking. If you have a podcast and you want my voice on there, and you like the things I talk about, I would probably have a lot of fun doing that. So I'm just open to collaborating. I want to be of service, and I want to do what I love in the midst of all of that. So reach out if